I'm really tickled to be able to introduce our speaker today. But the title really caught my eye. I don't know about you, but I've kind of transposed it a little bit. The F word no one wants to talk about. Well, I've transposed it to the S word that we really want to talk about. And the S word is synergy. For me, it's close to my heart, fall prevention. That's what I do. And balance and fall prevention are just like, you know, kissing cousins. So I had the opportunity to meet Andrea earlier this year or last year in 2020 as I was working on my balance ambassadorship program through a company called Zebrio. And so Andrea Case Rogers works for Zebrio. She's one of the execs there, and we really got to know each other well through my process of becoming a balance ambassador. Uh, as the CEO, that's the Chief Experience Officer of Zebrio, is a balance company, and it's commercializing technology. Came out of NASA. She'll tell you about that to prevent unnecessary falls and deaths on Earth. She's got 20 plus years experience in user-facing roles across various technical industries, and is passionate about products that solve real-world problems and delight the user. And in addition to that, I did a little sleuthing on the internet and found out she talks a little has a bit of an accent, and I'll give you a hint: Manchester and Wales. And maybe by the end of it, we'll be able to figure that out. Andrea, I'm going to hand it over to you.
Excellent. Well, thank you very much for having me. Thank you for the introduction, Bill. It's a delight to be here with you. And Brigham, I know I asked you to set up a poll early on for me where I would ask everyone what their main interest was, but thanks to your very great introduction session already, I think poll number 1 we can dispense with, and we'll come to poll number 2 in a little while. So we want to talk about falling, and the reason we call it the F word is because although those of us in a position who want to help older adults are willing to talk about it, very often the very people we're trying to help are very reluctant to talk about it. And so I wanted to introduce us to not just that concept and how we might be able to get around that very natural reticence to talk about anything which is allocated with frailty, with sliding down that slippery slope into the grave. I wanted to see if there was a different way that we can approach this problem and perhaps grapple with it and solve it. So with that said, let's talk about falls to begin with, and let's agree on a definition. Falling is to move downwards, typically fast without control from a higher to a lower level. This doesn't necessarily mean you have to hit the ground to qualify as a fall. And here you'll see our little mannequin, the green dot is showing his or her center of gravity, and the force of gravity is pulling that mannequin down outside their base of control, which in this diagram is really just that 1 foot that's on the ground. And so keep that in mind, and we'll come back to that a little bit later. So as we all know, this is not news. Falls are the #1 cause of trauma, death and injury, and that's actually across all age groups. Falling now kills more people than car crashes across the US. These figures in front of you are pre-2020 figures, so pre-COVID, and that'll become important as we move forward. We know 1 in 4 people over 65 fall every year. Once you get to over 80, it's actually 1 in 2, and that's a $50 billion cost right now that Medicare picks up, and it's growing, despite numerous efforts to curtail it. So let's try and see why that is the case. So why do people fall? And Brigham, if we can launch that first poll now. I don't know if you're able to do that. I'm not seeing an option to start a poll. Okay, never mind, poll's not working, we'll move forward. So you may well have come across a number of these things. You may have mentioned balance, you may have thought of age, gender, cognitive decline, foot problems, blood pressure, medications. All of these things, you would be correct. There are in fact at least 21 groups of risk factors for falling. They all affect individuals slightly differently. There is no one simple thing that can change that. And in fact, aging is one of them. A number of these very vital factors, such as sensory input, loss of muscle strength, delayed central processing, reduced number of neurons, all of those things, you'd be right in saying, do have a negative effect on somebody's falling. But there is another thing which is in our control, a co-founding factor, which is that of disuse. One of the interesting things about falling is that there are a number of programs which have shown to be effective. And so if we know that there are programs that are effective in reducing falling, and we're now paying more attention to this, why are we still seeing this great increase in the number of falls and in fact the severity of falls? So we know that disuse is one confounding factor, and now here we are in 2021 with another one. Now, there are lots of waves on this line, on this graph here. There's obviously people who are affected by COVID itself. There's the interruption of chronic condition care, but I want you to pay attention to this big, thick red line, which is the fall wave. Now, halfway through 2020, the Australian Physical Therapy Association revealed that they had already seen a 30% increase in falls requiring hospitalization from people who are living in long-term care. That was 6 months into the pandemic, and it's only going to get worse. We all know, for very good reasons, people hunkered down, stopped doing a lot of the things that they were doing. Fitbit announced partway through 2020 that they'd already seen, certainly in the first lockdown, a massive reduction in the average number of steps taken by people across the world. This is the reality of it. It was done for a number of good reasons, but we do then have an opportunity in 2021 to address this and try to see what can we do to prevent this falls epidemic from taking off in 2021. Now, the CDC has this great fall reduction process. First, you measure a person's fall risk, then you apply one of these interventions or treatments, which we know work, and then the outcome is that you can reduce falls. Fantastic. One major problem with this is that there isn't a gold standard for measuring fall risk in the first place, and current methods are actually missing 69 to 85% of people who are high risk. And by high risk, we mean people who then fall within the next 12 months. Then, of course, we have that patient denial about their current physical status. Nobody wants to admit that they've fallen. Sometimes people forget or they just decide not to mention it. Nobody wants to be saddled with that walker or that cane, even if that assistive device can help them. Secondly, even if you have assessed somebody as high risk, how do you get through those many, many risk factors to apply the right one to start moving the needle to start helping this person? And then, of course, there's the feedback cycle. It's so long. If you've put somebody through a program to try and improve their balance, it's several months, 6, even up to 12 months to see has your program on a population basis actually had an effect. How many falls did you get this year versus last year? And all of this just further complicates what is already a complicated issue. So then let's come back to our little mannequin. And let's try to look at what is the opposite of a fall. And here I feared Bill was going to steal my thunder a little bit by putting fall prevention and balance hand in hand, but he's absolutely right. Here, our mannequin is well balanced. You can see that center of gravity is falling within his base of support. And so I'd like to propose that we look at the opposite of a fall as being good balance. That's your ability for your body to maintain an upright and steady posture as you go around your daily life. And so can we use that as a method for potentially screening people for fall risk? If we say that good balance is the opposite of fall risk, can we use those two things as two ends of a continuum and come up with something meaningful? And this is in fact what the technology that Zibrio is using has done. This technology was born in the US space program. And for the last 15 years, we've been doing extensive research, both on astronauts and indeed on older adults. So it's a platform, you stand on it for 1 minute, and you can see this person's looks like they're wobbling. In fact, if you've ever tried standing completely still, even with your eyes open, you'll find it's not possible. We're all making these tiny little micro corrections, and that enables us to measure those corrections happening by the weight transfer under your feet. The algorithm then analyzes that pattern that you make for patterns of stability and instability, and it gives you a simple number between 1 and 10. And imagine you are an elite athlete on a gold medal winning day. Very rare to get a 10, represents the peak of human balance performance. And then we have 1 at the opposite end of the scale, which would be your high fall risk. And what the subsequent research has done is you can see those 3 color coding groups. The red zone is your high risk for falling zone. You are 3 to 5 times more likely to fall in the next year than those people scoring 7 and above. And 4, 5, and 6 is your middle zone. Now, when we say that we can predict your risk of falling here, we're not suggesting that by taking this test, you'll know that on May 25th, you'll trip over the cat. It's more a question of what is your state of postural stability at the moment? And if you don't do anything about it, either to weaken it or strengthen it, this is your likelihood of falling in the next year. We also know that those people who score in that red zone are likely to fall without any great inciting incident. So they can just be walking in the garden and look down at a flower and oh, suddenly I was there on the ground. Versus those people 7 and above, it's not impossible that they can fall, but typically it's something a little bit more extreme, like a ski slope, a wet marble floor that they've been hurrying across, something along those lines. And then of course, having had that score, you want to know, well, how can I improve it? How do I know what I need to pay attention to out of those 21 risk factors to start improving my balance before I go back and measure myself and see if it's worked? And here on the right-hand side of your screen, you can see the little screen that says balance profile. You can see those 21 risk factors shrunk down to 6 major areas, which are applicable across all populations. And we all have some level of input or impact that we can have on all of those 6. And I'll come back to those in a minute. But first I wanted to talk about the power of the measurement itself. And I don't know if anyone here uses any kind of measurement device, whether it's a step tracker or heart rate monitor. But I wanted to share this story. This is a lady called Judy. She was 85 at the time that she joined our study. And the purpose of the study was simply to measure balance and tell the people their score. That was it. There was no intervention prescribed. She was in an independent living facility that did have balance and exercise classes. And so you can see it's a slightly messy trace. Balance is messy because these many things are affected. If one of those things changes, then your balance responds quite quickly, even within a day, to that change. So in Judy's case, you can see she scores initially in that red zone. She does fall, fortunately doesn't break anything. And you can see that within a month of being prescribed physical therapy, her score has jumped 4 points up into the middle of the moderate zone. That's how fast balance can react to the appropriate intervention. And from there and for the rest of the year, she bounces around in that yellow zone, in the moderate risk zone, until the holidays come around and Judy is the social leader of her community, the exercise classes stop, and look what happens to her balance. Equally quickly, it reacts and drops down into the red zone. So what this graph is telling us, you can see after the holidays finish and the exercise classes start again, up she goes, and even getting up into 7s and 8s territory in her late 80s, which certainly bucks the average trend. So for Judy, the key for her was clearly her exercise. The other 6 pillars of her balance were more or less okay. They would have impacted perhaps daily fluctuations a little bit, but she knew the one thing she needed to pay attention to was her balance exercise classes. And so if we look at our 6 pillars of balance, this is represented by that little strength feature. We know that leg strength in particular is very important for balance, and doing those leg strengthening exercises helps get your body through that range of motion and helps tune the different parts of the balance system so that they can work more efficiently together. I often say, we know that all those things that aging the older violin, where the tuning pegs are a little bit loose, and after each part of that same group, Elizabeth was around the same age as Judy. Now she had a slightly different balance profile, and you can see that her trace runs all over the place. Like Judy, she started low. Balance classes and Tai Chi get her up into the yellow and even touching on that green zone. And then she had a health problem. And this is life. Life throws us curveballs from time to time. And Elizabeth actually needed surgery. And then the medication that she was on after surgery made her balance worse. But what she did is she used the data from her balance screenings, which was around once a week, And she kept going back to her doctor and saying, this medication is still making me dizzy. Look what it's doing to my balance. And she used that together with her doctor to be able to try different medications, different doses, potentially a different brand, to try and get that cocktail working so that it was less noxious for her balance. So that was one thing down. The second thing she had to deal with is she very often got very sleepless nights. And on the days where she'd had very poor sleep, her balance was back in that red zone. But she very quickly noticed that if she paid attention to that and maybe had a nap in the afternoon, the protective effect on her balance was actually pretty strong. And so there she has 3 really important data points that she can use. The medical condition itself needs sorting out, then the medications associated with that needed sorting out, and then after that, she was just left with that sleep component. And these are, the purpose of these 6 pillars of balance is not really as a rod to beat yourself up about. Life happens. It's a question of saying, okay, these things operate as a team together to work and help my balance. How can I strengthen my team? What do I need to pay attention to? If one member is going to be weak, I need to work a little bit harder on the other members to keep them strong. And in fact, in that cohort, this was not something that the study was meant to tease out, but those people who participated in the study saw a 54% reduction in actual falls the year that they took part in the study and used the technology compared to the year before. So they're all 1 year older, but they fell 54% less. Now, it wasn't designed to tease this out, but we discovered through subsequent discussions with the activity director and with the people who participated that it seemed that the knowledge of that number, a little bit like your Fitbit telling you you've got 9,000 steps to go at 6 o'clock in the evening, seemed to trigger a healthy behavior that had a beneficial effect on their balance. So we did another study after that, which was a 1 year prospective study. And this is where we look at the predictive element of the balance score, where we tested over 400 people. We followed them for a year, called them up every month and said, have you fallen? Any slips, trips, bumps, dizzy spells? We've got a very lovely rich data source, which enables us to stratify people into that red, yellow, and green zone. And so in essence, what we have is that if we go back to that CDC plan, we can actually identify 2 to 4 times more high-risk people than the current methods. We can then, using the 6-pillar balance method, identify what is the key for each person. What do you individually need to focus on first? Let's go away and work on it for a week, for a month, whatever it might be, and come back again and see, where is your balance now? What's the next thing in line that we need to do? And it also, from a population perspective, if you're tracking multiple people, allows you to see in real time what's changing. Because we know balance can respond quite quickly to the right treatment, you can see in the course of as little as a month or 2 across the population, have you moved anything? And we know that if you move people from the red to the yellow zone, you've already reduced falls by anywhere between 21 to 33%. So we think this is such a powerful, simple tool to be able to use. 1 60-second stand on something which looks like a bathroom scale to get you these kinds of outputs. We're actually working very closely with AARP at the moment and won a number of challenges with them, which we're delighted to be involved with. And this one challenge really, we're particularly proud of it because it hits to the heart of what Zibrio is about, which is about empowering people to, in this case, they called it helping older adults stay in the game. But we made a very conscious decision early on to fall into the category of age tech, which is not about surveillance, and it's really about empowerment and showing people what they can do and what's possible. So just another quick summary. We worked in 8 senior living facilities, 2 physical therapy clinics, a number of outpatient clinics in order to validate those clinical trials, which is published in Frontiers in Medicine. So that's a summary of where Zibrio has come from and what we're trying to do. We feel passionately that balance is misunderstood. All too many people feel it's an inevitable slide down into frailty. And we have shown over and over again that when you can zone in on 1 or 2 factors to focus on, and work on those and have the power of this measurement to back up what you're seeing and feeling, that you actually have a very, very powerful tool to reverse that trend in many cases. So do I have any questions from anyone?
Yeah, yes, Andrea. I did actually see something on Zebrio. Oh, I like your celebrity picture there with
Joe Montana, should we get back to him?
Yeah. Who is that, right? Anyway, no, I did see something on this, and I noted that it was up for pre-sale. This particular scale that you have. When is that available? I don't
Right, that's a great question. So we did open for pre-sales at the beginning of, or the end of 2019, in fact, anticipating delivery in 2020. However, the pandemic did rather scramble supply lines and manufacturing for us. So for those people who pre-ordered, we're anticipating delivering to them in February of this year. And so any order placed now would likely go out in March.
Okay, I'm glad I asked, because I thought I saw something about it quite a while ago. And I was talking to some of our seniors at the Senior Center about that, and I didn't know really anything about the program. So I'm really glad that you're here today. And I suppose I could look it up. There's a website or something I can give people information.
That's right. Yeah, Zebrio.com.
Okay.
Very, very simple. So yes, we were significantly delayed last year. Bringing any new product through the manufacturing hoops always takes longer than people anticipate. And then with the supply line changes and factories shutting down for COVID, we also had a number of our suppliers already working on COVID specific problems. So anytime they had a development, our project got shunted to the side, quite rightly, so that they could deal with PPE and other issues. So it's been a long, slow tortoise journey over the last 18 months or so, but I'm glad to say we're getting close to.
Yeah, well, I've been anticipating catching that pass from Joe for a long time. But we do have balance classes also at the Senior Center, so it's good to know. Thank you.
We also have, Al, I didn't talk to it, but it was mentioned here on the right of your screen. We actually offer a balance specialist training course as well for trainers. It's an online-based course that really helps people focus in on balance and the effective aging on balance, as specific from working on something with younger adults.
And that's accessible through your website as well?
It is.
Okay, great, thank you.
And Al, if it's of any help, as a balance ambassador, I will have the scale in February. If you want me to do a show and tell for you or for any other organizations that are represented here, I'm happy to come out and bring my scale and have you do a demo at any time.
That is a fabulous idea. Thank you. Yes, I would love that. When we can do it.
Hi, Bill. This is Christine at the Villas. I would love to do that as well.
Great.
Check.
I'll post it on Facebook.
Thanks, Bill.
Is this product made for individuals to purchase, or just for like a group setting?
That's a great question. So on the left of your screen there, you have two scales, one black, one white. The black one is designed for group settings. It doesn't really connect with anything. You can plug it in if you want to. The white scale with the green on the outline actually lights up with your full risk color. And it will interface also with the app with those 6 pillars of balance that I mentioned. So you can see that there. And will automatically suck your score in, or indeed you can log a score manually as well if you wanted to. So there's the consumer version is the light up one that is battery only, and the pro version is the black one, which can plug into the wall and you can carry around with you and move from place to place.
I don't know. I think I remember that the commercial version was about $300, which I think is great. As I get older, I worry more and more about my balance and strength. But what does the professional one go for pre-order?
So the pre-order for the professional is $449, and it does come with some additional options, such as an extended warranty or some additional balance training, depending really on on the location that it's going to be used in. We have training packages aimed at, say, senior living facilities, others for exercise trainers particularly. The idea being to not only help you maximize the benefit you're getting out of the scale, but also help you minimize any of the risks, such as, you know, leaving it in a place and in a assisted living or memory care where someone might trip over it, for example, we would advise against. And then what we have found, certainly for those people working more on the fitness side of things, is where we have held balance screenings in fitness centers, there's typically an immediate uptick in class signups as people measure themselves. We all want to get that 10 out of 10, and it doesn't really matter how often I explain to people that getting 10 is extremely difficult. But there's then an automatic hunger for, I want to get better. How can I do that? And that's where you want to have your, you know, your exercise staff on site to be able to answer that question and lead them onto the appropriate class.
Do you, the dilemma between senior care places where staff really want to keep people safe and stationary versus moving and exercising, how do you negotiate that, and how does Zebrio help with that negotiation? Because that's a big deal.
You're right, and it's, you know, we the minute you start caring for somebody else and being responsible for them, you become much more risk averse than you would be when you're just thinking about yourself, and rightfully so. And it comes back to that slide about the use and disuse. And so what the scale can do, if you have got people who are already very frail, you obviously want to spot them when you're measuring them, but you can use it as a, here's the baseline measurement for my population, and then guide those people who are weaker. They may need much more hands-on kind of fitness help. Maybe it's a one-to-one physical therapy or two-to-one physical therapy to build up some of not just balance training specifically, but also potentially some strength in the lower body. And there are a number of, that would enable you to stratify your clients, say in a senior living facility. So those who are weakest, right, we want to get them this help. Let's run it for a couple of months. Let's bring them back. Let's do another test, see how many people have edged up from the red into the yellow zone. Can we then, maybe those in the green zone are totally fine with exercising on their own, or group exercises that can be a little bit more challenging. And it allows the users themselves, the residents, to actually tune into where they are that day. And so we're really there to be supportive. Ultimately, the more you can get people moving, the stronger and more capable they're going to be, and the less frail. But obviously it's necessary to do that in such a way that you're not putting them at risk. This is where we mentioned the training course, which helps people really drill down to that, the full risk equation, that if someone's lying in bed, they're getting weaker and weaker and weaker, but their opportunity to fall is pretty much zero, versus the person who's walking around and participating in exercise. Yes, their opportunity to fall is higher, but their intrinsic risk factors are strengthening and going down all the time. So it is highly personalized and highly individualized. And this is one of the reasons why we think fall prevention has not yet been solved, is because it's hard to individualize something at scale without some kind of technological help. And ultimately, the scale is going to give you that snapshot. Where is that person today? What's the appropriate thing for them to be doing? Are we doing enough for them? Are we doing too much for them? You know, there's the overtraining scenario as well.
Well, thank you again.
Yeah, really a joy to hear you speak again, Andrea. This is for me, very special to bring this to the group. It's close to my heart, and I look forward to further association with Zebrio and being able to extend that to the other members here as they desire.